Today we're going to be talking about producers. Producers are really cool and very important in our food chain. We talked in a previous class about food chains and how important they are, and if one species in the food chain disappears, the whole food chain will collapse. And today we're going to talk about how energy moves through the food chain. As energy moves through a food chain, it depletes a little bit. When a cow eats corn, say the corn has 100 calories in it. The cow eats the corn, uses up 90% of those calories. So 90 calories go towards the cow being able to move and grazing and just generally being alive. And the last 10% of that corn that cow ate is stored inside of the cow. And then when the cow goes on to be butchered and turned into hamburgers, you're only getting 10% of the energy from that corn. So in an ecosystem, there are three important groups. These groups are the producers, the consumers, and the decomposers. And today we're going to talk about that first group, the producers. A producer's whole purpose in life is pretty much to be eaten. Producers are very important for our ecosystem. And we're going to find examples of them in our very own backyards. A producer is the very first link in our food chain. A producer is something that captures the sun's energy and stores it for itself and passes it on to the animals that eat it. Can you think of an example of a producer? If you said any type of plant, you are right. Producers are plants. Plants like grass and trees and vegetables are all producers. Something that eats a producer is called a consumer. Something that eats only producers, what could they be called? Something that eats only plants. Do you know what it is? A herbivore. Producers are very important because they harness the sun's energy and turn it into glucose in a process called photosynthesis. So your task this week is to go into your backyard with your journal and a pencil or colored pencils and find an example of a producer. So any type of plant you find in your backyard. And then, with your parents' help, you could find out what animals eat it. Animals that eat producers are called consumers. And there's a couple different layers of consumers, and we'll talk about those in next week's video. So if you follow me outside, we're gonna go find some producers in my own backyard. So my example of producers from my yard are these little violets. What animal do you think eats these violets? Rabbits! Rabbits will come into your yard and they'll munch on these little guys. If you remember from our class about edible plants, you can eat these too. But you just have to be really careful and make sure that they're not in a place where your dog is going to the bathroom on them. And make sure that your parents aren't using any kind of weed killers or pesticides in your yard, because if you eat them when they have those on them, you'll get really sick. So here we have some producers that I planted. You can plant your own producers and have a little garden. A garden is the perfect example of producers, since you're growing the vegetables that you will eat. So if you go out in your yard and use your journal, ask your parents to send me along what you've done. I would love to see. In next week's video, we'll talk about consumers and all the different levels of consumers. So get your journals and go on outside and have some fun. I'll see you next week. This is a journal boy. Look at them teeth.